العين الإسرائيلية أهلا بكم.
Israel Watch welcomes you. Today we are discussing the aggressive war on Lebanon, the Israeli threats regarding a ground invasion into southern Lebanon, and the doubts among settlers about the promises of returning to their settlements in occupied northern Palestine. Additionally, we will touch on the plans concerning the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. Joining us in the studio to delve into these topics is our esteemed political analyst, Mr. Hamza Al-Bashtawi. It's great to have you with us, dear sir.
Thank you.
Let's begin, dear viewers, by discussing the aggressive war against Lebanon and the new threats issued by Israel's new war minister, Israel Katz. He has mentioned a shift towards deeper incursions into southern Lebanese villages. One military analyst in the Hebrew media noted that Hezbollah still possesses significant missile capabilities that pose a challenge to the Israelis, suggesting that the leaders of the occupation should carefully consider this.
אז נראה לי שבלשכת ראש הממשלה מבינים טוב יותר את תמונת המצב מאשר שר הביטחון החדש. צה"ל ממצא את הפעולה שלו, הוא השמיד את כל התשתיות בקו הכפרים הראשון, 3-4 קילומטר מהגבול, נערך בשטחים שולטים, לא נסוג כולו לתוך שטח ישראל. צה"ל נערך להרחיב את הפעולה אם יראו לו, אבל בואו נגיד שיש בדרום לבנון סדר גודל של 200 כפרים שיעים. אני לא חושב שישראל רוצה להמשיך ולתאר את כל הכפרים האלה, וגם אם היא תתאר אותם, זה לא יעצור את אש הרקטות. לחיזבאללה יש כ10,000 רקטות, מה שמכונה קצרות, 40 קילומטר, שפוגעות בחיפה ובקריות, כ500 טילים ארוכים שמגיעים גם למרכז הארץ, ועוד בערך 100 טילים מדויקים. הוא יוכל להמשיך ולהעסיק את העורף הישראלי, ולכן הכוונה כאן היא להגיע להסדרה. אין סיבה להישאב פה לפעולה ארוכה. הסדרה כזאת ניתנת להשגה. כרגע ההישגים הנוספים שעוד מחכים לנו בלבנון הם כאלה נמוכים שלא שווה בשבילם להשקיע את המחיר הזה. אני חושב שגם שר הביטחון וגם איש האופוזיציה בני גנץ צריכים להבין שהמשך הרחבת הפעולה היא תביא בעיקר למחירים ולמעט מאוד הישגים.
Mr. Hamza, what are the objectives behind the threats issued by the leaders of the occupation, particularly the new Minister of War, Israel Katz, as they seek to penetrate deeper into Lebanese territory?
طبعا هذا ليس بالجديد.
This situation is certainly not new, and it comes from a minister who lacks professionalism in managing warfare. The dismissed minister Yoav Gallant was often referred to as a professional minister, having come from the military ranks where he served as the commander of the southern region and was a candidate for chief of staff before taking on the role of minister of war. He issued threats regarding Gaza but failed to achieve any results in the context of those threats or what they call military operations in the area. He spoke of various phases of operations, yet he has not met any of the war's objectives. The northern region, despite numerous military actions and destruction, still houses around 300,000 residents, making up about 33% of Gaza's territory. We've seen today that resistance operations from Jabalia are targeting the occupation's vehicles and soldiers. The statements from Israel Katz and some Israeli media reflect the moral collapse affecting the army. We are talking about 5 divisions and around 70,000 soldiers who are unable to make any ground progress. There is a noticeable shift in the Hebrew media's language, using terms like incursion and ground operation and ground maneuver. Meanwhile, rockets continue to be launched from the front lines, and resistance operations are evolving with surprises and advancements in missile technology. These statements seem to be an attempt to cover up the significant failures and shortcomings of the army, which is more focused on destruction than actual combat. We've witnessed systematic bombing and the deliberate destruction of cities.
Dear sir, in this report, we noted that Israeli commentator Alan Ben David is concerned about the risks associated with the Israeli army's deeper incursions into southern Lebanese villages. What are your thoughts on this concern? What do you think he fears?
Of course, it's important to recognize that political and military commentators are currently aligned with the military machine and the army. They're not merely sharing opinions, they're reflecting a broader sentiment within the ranks of the anxious and confused occupying forces. Right now, there's a palpable fear of both above-ground and underground ambushes. Despite the Air Force exerting destructive power across Lebanon and Gaza, the ground forces are struggling. They're hindered by a shortage of personnel due to recruitment issues and a lack of reserve soldiers. Additionally, there's a significant deficit in equipment, particularly with the Merkava tanks and D9 bulldozers, largely due to the threat posed by explosive devices in southern Lebanon and Gaza. Since the onset of what they refer to as the ground operation, or Northern Arrows, the quality of ambushes executed by resistant fighters in locations like Keferkila and Odessa has instilled fear in the occupying army, preventing any significant advances. Some soldiers had been using their cell phones to capture images near various homes, but they have now been prohibited from doing so, as these photos have started to document the launch of resistance rockets from the border area between Lebanon and the occupied Palestine.
الفاصل بين لبنان وفلسطين المحتلة.
وفي السياق ذاته يبدو
In a similar vein, it appears that the settlers displaced from the occupied northern Palestinian territories are not convinced by the promises made by the leaders of the occupation and their military regarding their swift return to their settlements. The mayor of the northern settlement of Margaliet emphasized that the settlers are not a herd of cattle for Netanyahu and his war minister to make decisions about without consulting them.
אנחנו נרמלנו את הירי. זאת הבעיה שלנו, לא שהמצב ישתפר. אנחנו פשוט נרמלנו את המצב. נרמלנו את זה שיש ירי, נרמלנו את זה שיש מטחים לכיוון חיפה, לכיוון נהריה, לכיוון כרמיאל. ואנחנו התושבים שבצפון האמיתי, בצפון, באצבע הגליל, ביישובי הגדר, לנו אין את הפריבילגיה להיכנס למרחב מוגן. אנחנו כל הזמן במרחב מוגן. אנחנו לא יכולים לתמרן שם. ומי שחושב שיכול להחזיר אותנו בהינף יד טועה, ואני אומר את זה, ואני אומר את זה גם אצלך, אלי, שמדינת ישראל, שראש ממשלת ישראל, ושר הביטחון החדש, יודעת, גם לזה יש לי הרבה מה לומר, שלא יחשבו שהם מחזירים פה לבתים עדר כבשים. הם מחזירים בני אדם, הם צריכים לשבת ולדבר איתנו ולהגיע להבנות עם תושבי הצפון, ואחר כך להגיע להבנות מול החיזבאללה ומול לבנון. קודם כל תדברו איתנו, ואין שיח כרגע בין מדינת ישראל לתושבי הצפון. הנתק הוא הרבה מאוד זמן, במשך שנה וחודש ימים.
What is your interpretation, Professor Hamza al-Bashtawi, regarding the significant skepticism from settlers about the promises made by the occupation leaders to return them to the settlements in northern Palestine?
يعني الشكوك تكبر وتنمو في صفوف المستوطنين.
Doubts are growing among the displaced settlers, whose numbers had increased from around 100,000 to 150,000 before the operation began. Benjamin Netanyahu aimed to return them to the northern settlements, but now we're talking about 1 million people. The displacement is not just from the northern settlements, but also the city of Kiryat Shmona, which is about 7 kilometers away and covers an area of 15 square kilometers. We are also seeing displacement from Acre, Haifa, and Safed, which has significantly impacted the central region, including Golan and Tel Aviv. Many settlers are now looking to move to the Negev in the far south. There's a great deal of fear as they believe that the Israeli army's failure to achieve its objectives in Gaza and to return settlers to their border settlements will have even greater repercussions on the southern Lebanon front. This situation is not only about the legendary capabilities and bravery of the resistance and its people, the geography and terrain are also working in favor of the resistance. This has heightened the settlers' anxiety and fear regarding this military operation, which has led to the further displacement, destruction in the settlements, and increased concerns about reverse migration and uncertainty about their ability to remain in the area.
وعلى صعيد عدم اليقين والقدرة على البقاء داخل الكيان.
وهذا ربما ما دفع برئيس بلدية.
The mayor of the border settlement of Margaliet expressed that settlers are not just a herd of cattle for Benjamin Netanyahu and his war minister to decide their fate without consulting them. This highlights the tension that has developed between the settlers and Netanyahu along with his administration ministers.
حكومته.
يعني المفاجأة أن معظم رؤساء المجالس المحلية للمستوطنات وللتجمعات
It's surprising that most heads of local councils for settlements and settlement communities in northern occupied Palestine are refusing to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu or any representatives from his administration. Instead, they're engaging with military leadership and security officials because they've learned from some officers that the Israeli army and security agencies don't wish to continue this war. The one pushing for the continuation of the war is Netanyahu, as he seeks to maintain his power and political future. However, military and security levels are advocating for an end to the war, recognizing that it is impossible to bring settlers back through the so-called Operation Northern Shield. This military action has only increased the number of settlers and heightened their fears. Now, discussions within the settlement councils are focused on the necessity of reaching an agreement, as they understand that returning settlers is not feasible without a complete ceasefire that includes both Gaza and Lebanon. They are aware of this and are pressing the political level for decisions that they believe jeopardize their future and existence.
وقراراته التي يعتبرونها تضر بمستقبلهم وبوجودهم.
ولننتقل مشاهدينا إلى
Let's shift our focus, dear viewers, to the aggressive war on the Gaza Strip. After 13 months of the Israeli occupation forces failing to achieve the declared objectives of the war, including the elimination of Palestinian resistance, questions are increasingly directed at Netanyahu's administration regarding the reasons for this failure. During a session of the Knesset committees, there were heated exchanges with Minister Ben-Gvir, and it was stated that the idea of eliminating Hamas is nothing but empty talk.
בואו נחפש מילה נרדפת ללהכריע. בוקר היום השלישי למלחמה שוב נפתח בעוד דילמה תקשורתית. מחיקת הכוח הצבאי והשלטוני של החמאס. אמנם החלטנו לא להוציא את הסינק לתקשורת, מתכוון בן גביר, לא בטוח שעשינו נכון. בואו נהיה ריאליים. ישראל לא תשמיד החמאס. לצערנו. זה משפט מדהים. ביום השלישי של המלחמה בן גביר כותב בפורום האינטימי שישראל לא תשמיד את חמאס. אז למה בהמשך המלחמה הוא אומר שוב ושוב את הדברים האלו?
צריך להשמיד השמדה טוטלית את החמאס.
מנהיג לא יכול לשקר לעם. צה"ל לצערי לא ישמיד את חמאס. הלוואי שכן, אבל אנחנו לא שם, מכל מיני סיבות.
להשמיד את החמאס בעזה בלי לרחם. להשמיד את החמאס.
מילים ריקות זה דווקא השמדת החמאס. מי ישמיד את החמאס? אלה שכל 9 החודשים האחרונים אמרו לנו שחייבים להכיל.
Mr. Hamza, after 13 months of war in the Gaza Strip, the occupying army has not succeeded in eliminating Hamas, which was a primary objective of this war. What do you think attribute to this? And why does Netanyahu continue to insist on pursuing this aggression against Gaza?
بنيامين نتنياهو يربط مستقبله السياسي.
Benjamin Netanyahu links his political future and survival in power to the continuation of the war. He believes that the ongoing war is essential for maintaining his position, despite being unable to achieve any other goals set forth since the launch of the so-called Operation Iron Swords in Gaza. Netanyahu is concerned about the increasing internal divisions within Israeli society, which could lead to political, social, and party fragmentation, ultimately hindering the military's ability to accomplish its objectives. Currently, the army is not fighting based on strategic military goals. Instead, it is engaged in a retaliatory war. In Gaza, the Israeli military is causing destruction without achieving significant results. The systematic operations and airstrikes have not translated into political gains. While Netanyahu aims to eliminate Hamas, he simultaneously seeks negotiations with the group to finalize a deal, but he does not want an agreement that would completely end the war or lead to a full withdrawal of the troops from Gaza, which is a key demand of the resistance and Hamas, the leading Palestinian resistance movement in the area. The Israeli army is now without its former war minister, who used to speak about achieving successes and the army's capabilities. This situation has raised concerns for Chief of Staff Herzi Alvi about the fate of Yoav Gallant, as well as for Israeli security officials, particularly the head of the Shin Bet, who fear that Gallant's fate could be mirrored. There are various confusions even within the U.S. administration, which has provided full support to Benjamin Netanyahu during this war. They are beginning to feel that they are incurring costs without seeing results. This will be reviewed in the upcoming phase, as many leaders and officials, both in the U.S. administration and in the West, now view the Israeli entity as a military outpost that is not delivering the expected benefits from its presence in the region.
لا تؤدي الأرباح المطلوبة منها ومن وجودها في المنطقة.
ولنبقى في قطاع غزة.
Let's focus on the situation in Gaza regarding the Israeli captives still held by the resistance. Netanyahu's failure to secure their release through military force, as he promised at the onset of the aggressive war against the Gaza Strip 13 months ago, has led families of the captives to confront both the administration and the Knesset due to the ongoing harassment they face.
داخله.
ביום ה-402 למלחמה, גם היום ועדות הכנסת סערו.
לא נתת למשפחות להיכנס.
שרבע שעה אנחנו עומדים בחוץ, ואתה מסרב לתת לנו להיכנס ולהשמיע את זעקתנו.
ועדת הכלכלה בראשות דוד ביטן שוב שברה שיאים של אטימות. משפחות חטופים וחטופות מגיעות באופן קבוע לוועדות כדי להנכיח את המאבק להשבת יקיריהן. כמו חנה כהן, דודתה של ענבר היימן, זכרה לברכה, שגופתה עדיין בשבי חמאס.
אני רוצה להוסיף, אני מבקשת להוסיף דבר קטן. כל העסקאות שהועלו עד היום היו עסקאות חלקיות בטפטופים.
אמרתי שאני מבקש להפסיק.
לא עסקאות כוללות. אנחנו רוצים את הילדה שלנו חזרה בבית.
אמרת את זה כבר, אמרת את זה.
זה לא משנה, אתה תשמע אותי עוד 1000 פעם.
טוב, אני מבקש שתציעו אותה החוצה בבקשה.
אני לא אצא החוצה.
המשפחות שמגיעות לוועדות מבקשות להשמיע את קולן ולדרוש תשובות מחברי הכנסת. וכן, הדבר משפיע על לוח הזמנים של הוועדות ונועד לגייס את חברי הכנסת למאבק. אבל יש מי שמגלים פחות סבלנות לאנשים שנלחמים על חיי יקיריהם כבר 402 ימים.
מבקש ממך כן התייחסות מה נעשה השבוע כדי להוציא אותם מהגיהנום.
אין לי שום כוונה להתייחס לזה עכשיו. בישיבה הקודמת נאלצתי להפסיק את הישיבה כי אתה לא הסכמת לקבל את העמדה שלי, עצרתי את הישיבה.
אני רוצה שאתה תתייחס, זה המינימום שמגיע לה.
אני לא מתכוון להתייחס.
Mr. Hamza, 13 months ago into the war in Gaza, and the captives remain in the hands of the resistance. What do you think about this reality that highlights the inability of the occupying army to achieve one of the main objectives of this war?
منذ بداية العدوان على قطاع غزة.
From the very beginning of the aggression against Gaza, the primary goal was to secure the release of the Israeli captives from the hands of the resistance without any cost, as Benjamin Netanyahu stated, and to completely eliminate the resistance. However, due to the failure to release the captives through negotiations and exchange agreements, and the army's inability to achieve any military success regarding the captives, the Israeli positions have shifted significantly. Now, regarding Gaza and even Lebanon, there's been a noticeable change in rhetoric. They have started to talk about weakening the resistance rather than completely eradicating it. This shift indicates that Netanyahu is seeking mediation from the US, Egypt, and Qatar, despite his high-profile statements aimed at maintaining his image in front of the public. From the perspective of Israeli commentators, there is a belief that Netanyahu has caused significant losses to the Israeli army and settlers in the pursuit of releasing the captives, and he has only managed to do so through an exchange deal. Consequently, the pressure is mounting not only from the families of the captives and the opposition, but also from officials close to Netanyahu, who are urging for a deal. There is a strong belief that achieving any military success against the resistance, particularly regarding the captives issue, is unlikely.
فيما يتعلق بقضية الأسرى تحديداً.
Let's shift our focus from Gaza to the occupied West Bank, where Benjamin Netanyahu's administration is planning to annex settlements and parts of the West Bank. This move is taking advantage of the current political and military situation, as well as the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States, which has certainly motivated Smotrich to advance these plans for annexation.
היינו כפסע מהחלת הריבונות על ההתיישבות ביהודה ושומרון, ועכשיו הגיע הזמן לעשות את זה. שנת 2025 תהיה בעזרת השם שנת הריבונות ביהודה ושומרון. נתתי הנחיה למנהלת ההתיישבות במשרד הביטחון ולמינהל האזרחי להתחיל בעבודת מטה מקצועית ומקיפה, ולהכין בפועל את התשתית הנדרשת להחלת הריבונות.
מוריה, מה אומרים בלשכת ראש הממשלה? אם סמוטריץ' חשף את המהלך הבא של הממשלה? אז בלשכת ראש הממשלה לא מתייחסים בשלב הזה לדברים הללו של סמוטריץ'. אני חושבת שכדאי להזכיר, רודי, היינו כבר לפני 4.5 שנים סביב עסקת המאה, רגע לפני החלת ריבונות לשיטתו של ראש הממשלה נתניהו, אותה אמירה שריבונות על כל יהודה ושומרון ביום ראשון, מאז עברו עשרות רבות של ימי ראשון, וריבונות לא הגיעה ליהודה ושומרון. אני חושבת שצריך להמתין רגע לכניסתו של טראמפ כדי להבין לאן הרוח נושבת גם בהקשר של יהודה ושומרון, ולהזכיר שכחלק מעסקת המאה אז, שטראמפ הסכים לסיפוח של שטחים, היו גם לא מעט דרישות שישראל הייתה צריכה, וכל מיני תמורות שישראל הייתה צריכה לתת לפלסטינים, גם את זה סמוטריץ' צריך לזכור.
Mr. Hamza, what is the truth about what is being planned for the occupied West Bank by Netanyahu's administration, especially by Smotrich?
أنا أعتقد بأن هناك مخططات.
I believe there are multiple plans targeting the West Bank, with significant focus on both its geographical and demographic aspects. This issue isn't limited to Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. It now involves the entire Israeli administration and the ruling coalition. Based on my analysis of the internal situation within Israel, it seems that the Israeli entity may be planning a larger-scale military operation throughout the West Bank. This operation could serve as a show of force to distract from failures in Lebanon and Gaza. Ultimately, Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition aim to fully annex Area C in the West Bank and declare complete control over the southern region and the Jordan Valley. This indicates that the core of the Zionist project is centered in the West Bank. Netanyahu and his coalition, who welcomed Donald Trump's re-election, anticipate support from the U.S. administration to bolster settlement activities in the West Bank, leading to increased settlement expansion. I expect this project will be preceded by a significant military operation, with security and military considerations at the forefront.
Political researcher Hamza Al-Bashtawi, thank you very much for joining us in this episode of Israel Watch. Dear viewers, take care until we meet again tomorrow, God willing.